Want to join me this morning? We are going to be in Mark chapter 11. Mark chapter 11. Mark chapter 11. Now, there is no shortage of background to what we are covering, and so as we go through this, it is time for me to control just how many cross references we look at. So bear with me. But Mark chapter 11, we've been walking our way through the text of Mark over the last year, and I want you to see this because look at what happens here. Mark chapter 11, verse number 1. We covered a few of these details last week. So as you walk through the Lord's Supper, and as you walk through Jesus preparing to enter the city, and just all that goes along with it, we talked last week, and we walked through this idea that Jesus had it all prepared beforehand. So he's walking through. He says, "Go. You're going to find this guy at this location. You need to follow him." And okay, there's all of this stuff that's going on. But I want you to see in Mark chapter 11, look what happens here. It says this: when they came nigh to Jerusalem, unto Bethphage and Bethany, near the Mount of Olives, he sent forth two of his disciples, and he said, "Go your way to the village over against you, and as soon as you are entered into it, you will find a colt tied, whereon never a man sat. Loose him and bring him to me." Okay, so he's got this thing prepared ahead of time. He sees that, hey, there's a certain prophecy that I'm about to fulfill, and to do this prophecy, there's something that I'm going to need. I need a special ride. All right, and so he says, "I need you to go get this special ride for me." And it's just interesting. You've got a colt that's tied whereon never a man sat. Now, if you've ever dealt with horses or riding animals, this is a very dangerous scenario to be in. I remember I used to work at a camp, and they broke horses, and they had to train the horse to, walk over a bridge, and they had to train the horse to walk by a tarp. And I learned from experience riding a horse one time that horses get spooked on anything. And so again, similar idea here. You've got this colt who's never had a man riding on it. So I think that's just one of the biggest miracles as we go through this narrative, that he managed to stay riding on this colt that no man had ever ridden before throughout. But again, it's a fulfillment of some prophecies. We're going to look at those. But I find it interesting that this account is one of the few accounts that's found in all four Gospels, which means it's unbelievably important for us to pay attention to. And what I want to do this morning is I want to show you something stupid that I own, which should not come as a surprise to you. I don't know what it is, okay? And you could probably, knowing me, guess where I found it. And also guess what it had once been used in. So I'll let you just, based on all the background information you know about where I acquire weird things and what I ended up doing with them, you know why I have this. But I want you guys to imagine this. I was cleaning out my office and I found this, okay? So I found it in a dumpster and I used it in an escape room, okay? So there you go. For those of you who are new, who are like, I don't know what I'm getting into. I build escape rooms for fun, okay? So this was a prop in an escape room, and when I was tearing out the escape room, I decided I'm going to hold on to it just in case I need it again. And I needed it again. All right? What is it's a statue. When I ask you what an idol is, a lot of you probably picture something like this. In fact, some of you might be a little uncomfortable that I'm holding a statue because you're going, why do you have an idol? Escape room, prop. It was glued into a table for like 3 years. Okay, but again, it's silly. It's stupid. It's a piece of wood that's carved like a man. And when the Bible talks about idols, it talks about this idea of you went and you cut down a tree and you carved half the tree into an idol and you fashioned it with gold and did all this wonderful stuff, and then you set it down in a prominent place and you bow down to it. And you take the other half of that tree that you carved into this intricate statue and you burn it for firewood, and you eat the food that you made on it. So what made this half of the tree special and that half of the tree warmth? And he goes, you're as pointless as your idols. And he'll use that logic to say, it's so stupid to think that you could worship something like this while you burn the other half of the tree that made that. And so we hear the idea of flee idolatry and don't be idol worshipers. And we hear all that. And in our mind, we still think of this. And we think of how silly it would be to bow down and worship this. And we do what we can to keep these out of our house because we're looking at it going, I don't want to even be seen as an idol worshiper. And I know, like, every time I walked into my office and I had that pile of escape room props sitting over there in the corner, I thought it was kind of weird that I had a random statue of, I don't know, a crusader or something. I don't know why I had a little statue just sitting over in the corner. And anybody who knows me knows that I'm not an idol worshiper. But if you walked into my office and you see this little box in the corner with that sitting in it, you're like, I don't know about you. But let me ask you this question. What are the idols that you have that aren't physical? Because I think that's what we've got the problem with right here in this passage. You've got a whole lot of people who are absolutely devoted and committed to Christ. Hosanna, celebrating. We're going to throw our garments down so he can walk on them. And we got these palm branches. We're going to lay them down and we're going to celebrate. But Jesus doesn't play their game. And Jesus doesn't do what they've asked him to do. And within a week, they've all turned on him. Within a week, even his own disciples have turned on him. They were idol worshipers. They just didn't have these kind of idols. And I want to ask you this question. What idols do you have in your life? What things are you worshiping right now that they are not this, but they're your own way? They're greed, they're covetousness. The Bible literally says covetousness is idolatry. Because why is it called idolatry? Because what covetousness is doing is saying, I want what I want. And I'm worshiping what I want like it's actually going to give me satisfaction and joy and pleasure. And I want you guys to think through this because, again, and I'm going to go put him away now, again, we would be uncomfortable to set this next to our bedside table. And every night we roll over and say, good night there, little dude. Hope you have a good night. But we might be keeping something like this by our bedside table. And it might be the first thing we look at in the morning, or it might be the last thing we look at night. And who knows what's going on? It's idolatry. I'm not saying don't keep your phone near your bed. You might, but whatever. But I'm saying we understand the concept of idolatry, even if it's not a physical statue. And I want you to see idolatry in action here. Because look what happens. Look at the worship that they give Jesus, and then look at the worship that they rapidly take away from Jesus as we go into next week. And so look what happens. He says, here's a colt tied. Direct fulfillment of prophecy. Loose him and bring him to me. And if any man says, why have you done this? Why do you do this thing? Say, the Lord hath need of him, and straightway he will send him hither. So Jesus has this plan beforehand. He says, hey, I'm going to send guys to come grab this colt. If somebody asks, this is the key word, and then give it to me. And the guy's like, okay. And that's what he does. And they went their way, and they found a colt tied by the door without the place where the two ways met. And they loosed him, and a certain of them stood by and said, hey, what are you doing? Why are you loosing the colt? And they said to him that as Jesus had commanded, and they let them go. And they brought the colt to Jesus, and they cast their garments on him, and he sat on them. So he's got a saddle made of clothing. And it says, many spread their garments in the way, and others cut down branches off the trees and strawed them in the way. And when they had went before, they that followed cried, saying, Hosanna! Blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord. Blessed be the kingdom of our father David that cometh in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest. Now, last time, right before Lord's Supper, I spoke. We talked about the Davidic covenant and these promises that God had made to David to say, hey, I will make of you a kingdom. I will give you a king that will never get off the throne. And that's what they think is about to happen here. They look at this and they're going, this is the fulfillment of everything. This means he's going to come and he's going to oust the Romans and we're going to have this king back. And the reign of David we're right here at the cutting edge of all this. And it's really easy to get excited and to get on board when you think everything's going to go your way. But Jesus is not going to play their game. He's not going to do things the way they wanted him to do. And they're going to lose their nerve and they're going to walk away. Because they're worshiping what they wanted him to do, not because of what he was about to do. And I would contest that what he was about to do was far more important and long-lasting than anything they thought he was going to do. If he had just thrown out the Roman Empire, who cares? The Roman Empire eventually collapsed anyway. The empire that replaced the Roman Empire has collapsed. The other empire that replaced the other empire that replaced the Roman Empire has collapsed. We have had several iterations of collapse. It None of that matters now. But what Christ did on that cross, when he died and he took the penalty for our sins, was far more substantial than any political victory ever could be. And they're looking at this and they're thinking temporal when they should be thinking spiritual, and they get disheartened because he's not playing the game right. And look what happens. And Jesus entered into Jerusalem and into the temple, and he looked around about him on things. When the eventide was now come, he went out unto Bethany with the 12. And that's where we get some other accounts here. But I want you to see this. So here's Mark chapter 11. Look at Luke chapter 19. Luke chapter 19. And again, every single one of the Gospels is going to recount this story. And it's recounting it on purpose. Look at Luke chapter 19. And look at verse 29. And again, if the Bible is taking the time to repeat this story multiple times, it means there's something extremely important about it. It's a lead up that we need to understand. Look at Luke 19, verse 28. It says, and when he had thus spoken, he went before them, and ascending up to Jerusalem. And it came to pass, when he came nigh to Bethphage and Bethany at the mount that is called the Mount of Olives, he sent his 2 disciples, and he said, go you into the village over against you. In it you shall find a colt tied, wherein never a man sat. Loose him and bring him hither. And if any man ask you, why do you loose him? You shall say to him, because the Lord hath need of him. And they that sent went their way, and they found even as he said unto them. And they came, and they were loosing the colt. The owners thereof said, why loose you the colt? And they said, the Lord hath need of him. So again, we see a reinforcement of this idea that Jesus had a plan. This was not a surprise. This was not unexpected. He knew where the colt was. He knew what the secret code word was going to be. He sent the disciples. He had prepared every bit of this ahead of time. And this is just in his lifetime. We're going to look at some prophecies that go before his lifetime that he couldn't possibly have, well, he did because he's God. But you know what I mean. If he was just a man, there's no way he could have oops, accidentally. No, prophesied here. Jesus comes along and fulfills them here, but he's got every detail worked out. And I want us to grasp that God has every one of these details worked out. We have to trust him. And so when Jesus comes along and he doesn't play our game, and he doesn't do it the way we want him to do it, you sit back and you trust him, because again, he is not some stupid idol. That's why the Bible calls these things dumb idols. They can't speak. They can't think. They can't reason. And he goes, I am not a dumb idol. I am there. I'm taking a vested interest in your life. I know what's going on, and I have every step of this planned out, even to my own death. I have every step planned out. I knew every whip. I knew everything that was going to happen. I knew every nail that was going to go into my hands. I have it all planned out, and I prophesied it beforehand so that you knew I had it all planned out. And if he's going to plan out something he's going to help us as well. And so I want us to see this, because look at these little details. It's a colt. It's not just a colt. It's a colt no one had ridden on before. It's a colt that's in this specific location. Go get it for me. And that's what we're seeing. And then verse 32, and he went their way, and he found it where it was supposed to be. All right, and so he goes, and he founds, and it says they were loosing the colt. The owner says, why do you loose the colt? The Lord hath need of him. We've heard this story before. And they went, and they brought to Jesus, and they cast their garments on the colt, and they set Jesus thereon. And he went, and they spread their clothes in the way. And when he was come nigh, even now to the descent of the Mount of Olives, the whole multitude of disciples began to rejoice and to praise God with a loud voice for the mighty works they had seen. Okay, you're on a good path. This is good. We should celebrate the mighty works that Jesus has done. We should celebrate what he's doing. But they give up partway through the week because he doesn't play the game the way they thought he was going to play it. Verse 38, they said, blessed be the King that cometh in the name of the Lord. Peace in heaven and glory in the highest. Again, if that's where the story ended, this is the triumph. This is beautiful. This is exactly what's supposed to happen. But what do half a week later? Jesus is being crucified. Jesus is being yelled at, and they're saying, his blood be upon us and our descendant. How do you go from celebrating the triumphal entry and saying, look at that, like heaven's arrived. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Think of all the great miracles that he did. To half a week later, gathering the same crowd around a Roman ruler, saying, crucify him. We would rather have a criminal released to us than this guy. Crucify him. I want him crucified dead center between two evildoers. I don't want him ruling over us, because Jesus didn't play their game. And look what happens. The Pharisees obviously were not cheering, okay? So we do have a group here that's a little bit dissenting. And look what happens. It says, verse 39, and some among the Pharisees and some among the multitude said, Master, rebuke thy disciples. And he answered and said, I tell you that if these should hold their peace, the stones would immediately cry out. And so again, and it says, and when he was come near, he beheld the city and wept over it. And he said, if thou hast known, even thou, at least in this thy day, the things which belong unto thy peace, but now are they hid from their eyes. For the day shall come upon thee that thine enemies shall cast a trench about thee, and compass thee round, and keep thee on every side, and shall lay thee even with the ground, and thy children within thee. They shall not leave in thee one stone upon another, because thou knewest not the time of thy visitation. And then he goes to the place that should be the spiritual hotbed. He goes to the place where you should find faith, and you should find faithfulness. But it's become a house of greed, and it's become a house of corruption. And look what happens. And it says, and he came to the temple, and he began to cast out them that sold therein, and them that bought, saying unto them, it is written, my house is the house of prayer, but you have made it a den of thieves. And then he goes out and he starts teaching. Let's look at one other passage here. Like I said, this is seen across all four Gospels, but we're continuing our way forward. Look at John chapter 12. John chapter 12. And again, we're seeing a few things here. We're seeing, first of all, that Jesus is celebrated by those who will eventually turn their back on him. We see that all of this is planned out. There's no surprise here. But we also see the love Jesus has, but again, he's not willing to withhold his judgment, because judgment is required on sin. And Jesus is looking at this city and he's going, if you had only known what you could have had. I remember when I was a counselor at camp, I was dealing with junior age kids. All right, and I typically had the 9 and 10-year-olds. I think every now and then an 11-year-old crept in, but I had these little guys, and they did not understand the concept that camp was a lot more fun when you obeyed. They seemed to understand. They seemed to think that as the counselor who ran the activities, I hated people and I just never ever wanted them to have fun. I don't know. I'm just that was the assumption I'm assuming they made, because they would come in and they would try to do their own thing. They'd write on the cabin. They'd disobey. And there were things that I would have to sit them down and discipline them. Obviously not like no, but more like, okay, you're gonna sit on your bed for this hour because you don't get to have fun with everybody else because you're not listening. I remember one time we were in this cabin, and if you've ever been to Ironwood, there's this steep dirt hill that leads up to the dining hall. And one of my campers, we rushed out the door and he rushed up to the dining hall, and I kept going, hey, you need to get back here. Like, I told you to get back down here. Like, we've got to do something together as a cabin. And he's like, I don't want to come down. I'm like, you will come down here now. Like, come here. Stomps his way down, and he comes down and he gets with me. And I was like, okay, now we can go as a cabin. He's like, you made me come all the way down here. It's like, listen, we're doing stuff together as a group. We are going as a group, and you just need to listen. It'll be better for you. And there were times where there were activities I wanted to do with them, but they would not listen. And so it was like, listen, I've done all these activities before. I don't want to go to BBs again, because I have shot BBs more times than I would ever want to touch a BB gun. I am okay missing BBs. I am okay missing archery. I come up with brand new activities for archery because I've had to do it every single week. I'm tired of archery, but I think archery would be really fun for you. But if you don't listen, we're going to sit right here in the cabin, and we're not going to go do archery. We're not going to go do BB guns. And it's going to be very boring for you. Because if I can't trust you enough to hand you a bow and trust that you're going to aim it that direction, and you're not going to be the guy who's like, and what I had to do is I had to sit there and tell them, this camp will be more fun if you just listen. Like, we will have bucket loads of fun. Like we will go nighttime scorpion hunting with black lights and we will do all this fun stuff, which like, yeah. But if I can't trust you to stay with the group, I am not hiking in the dark with you. Because you're going to wander off and that wild donkey that roams the hillside will eat you. Like I don't trust you being on your own. And there are disciplines that we sometimes have to lay out for those we care about because we're looking at it going, I can't trust you to give you anything more than I've already given you. In fact, I might have to take some stuff away because I don't trust you. And what Jesus is doing is he's looking at this city and he's going, if you only knew what you were missing out on. If you only knew what I had for you. But you're not listening. And so I'm going to have to level this whole city. And you guys are going to scatter. And you read in James, where James is the pastor of the church, and he goes to the saints who are scattered abroad, greetings. And he goes, count it all joy when you fall into diverse temptations, for the trying of your faith worketh patience. He's writing to a bunch of believers who just had to scatter from Jerusalem because they're being persecuted. And then right after that, Jerusalem itself is sacked and destroyed. And Jesus is looking at all this going, Jerusalem, if you had any idea of the peace and the prosperity I could have given you, if you had done it my way. And you're celebrating me coming in. You're rejoicing over the miracles that I've done. And yet what do? Crucify him. We would rather let a malefactor go than him because he didn't do it the way we said. And I want us to see that because, again, Jesus cares enough to say, oh, Jerusalem, what are you doing? What are you doing? And this is not new for you. You stoned the prophets. You did this. You did, like, Jerusalem. But he's going to go, and he's going to willingly go to the cross. And he's going to willingly take that consequence. And so we're here in John chapter 12, and let's look at this. John chapter 12, verse 12. John chapter 12, verse 12, and a little bit of the lead up, as you guys know, and the chief priests, they consulted how they might put Lazarus to death. So this is coming off the tail end of him raising Lazarus from the dead. And again, because of that, by reason, many Jews went away and believed on Jesus. So again, he's got kind of a Lazarus is brought back from the dead. They're believing on him. And the next day, much people were come to the feast, and they heard that Jesus was coming to Jerusalem. And they took branches of palm trees, and they went forth to meet him, and they cried, Hosanna! Blessed is the King of Israel that cometh in the name of the Lord. So they're celebrating him as their king. Now again, think about that. What does a king represent? And I know we in this country, whenever we hear the word king, we kind of break out in hives. Okay, we're like, yeah, kings. We don't, every July 4th, we blow up everything to celebrate the lack of a king in this country. Because we're like, all right, like July 4th, everybody blows everything up to celebrate our breakup with England. Because we're like, we don't have kings and we're glad about it. Like, but what's a king? What's a king? Because look at what they're doing. They're looking at Jesus, this rabbi, this guy walking around on earth, and they're going, you are the king who's come in the name of heaven. Think about what that means. They are saying, we are willing to submit to you. We are willing to listen to you. We are willing to praise you. We are willing to obey you. That's what it means to be a king. And they're going, Hosanna! Look at this great king who's arrived. Okay, last time I checked, the king doesn't answer to us. That's the whole point of being a king. He gets to do what he wants to do. Now, he should care for his people, and he should take care of those things. But they are basically looking at Jesus and saying, blessed is the king who comes in the name of God. But half a week later, crucify him. We will let his blood be upon us and our children. That is the seismic shift to go from we are willing for you to be our king. You're coming in the name of God. So just go ahead and kill him. Just get him out of the way. Because he's not doing it the way they thought. He's not doing it on their timetable. Look what happens. Verse 14. And Jesus, when they had found this young ass, all right, so this little colt, donkey, says he sat thereupon, for as it was written, fear not, daughter of Zion. Behold, thy king cometh, sitting on an ass's colt. little young donkey. And he says, these things understood not his disciples at the first. But when Jesus was glorified, then they remembered these things that were written of him, that were done, and that they had done these things unto them. And the people thereof that were with him when he had called Lazarus from the grave and raised him from the dead, they bear record. For this cause the people also met him, for that they had heard that he had done this miracle. The Pharisees therefore said among themselves, perceive ye how ye prevail nothing? Behold, the world is gone after him. Man, that's quite a prophecy. And the world really did go after Jesus. So it's impressive. But it says, and there were certain Greeks among them that came up to worship at the feast. And they came with Philip, which was Bethsaida in Galilee, and desired him and said, Sir, we would see Jesus. Philip cometh and telleth Andrew, and Andrew Philip, and he tells Jesus. And again, Jesus gives some prophecies here that we'll look at some other time. But again, really, really deep stuff coming out of this passage. I want to show you one or two other passages here. Let's turn back, because you notice this is a prophecy. Look at Zechariah. Now, I'll give you about 5 minutes to find Zechariah. Zechariah is not one of those books that we spend a lot of time in. I don't know that I've ever heard a sermon series through Zechariah. So I'm going to task whoever takes over adult Sunday school class, Zechariah is going to be your... No. But Zechariah, it's toward the end of the Old Testament. It's, again, one of these prophets that again, they're trying to encourage Israel. They're trying to get Israel to repent and turn back to the Lord. And there's this little subtle prophecy that's just kind of buried in the middle of a discussion. And this is what is being referenced in these Gospels. And so look at Zechariah chapter 9. Zechariah chapter 9, and look at verse 9. And again, it's right in the middle. Like, it's in the middle of this whole other discussion. And then the conversation just pivots. And you get this beautiful little prophecy that they go, remember that. Remember that when you see a guy come riding into Jerusalem on a colt. He's not going to ride in on a war horse. He's not going to ride in like this triumphal. No, he's going to ride in on this little donkey-like animal. And not going to be a well-trained. It's just, remember this. Zechariah 9, verse 9, look what it says. Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion. Shout, O daughter of Jerusalem. So it tells you pretty much exactly where this is going to take place. Hey Israel. Hey, Jerusalem. I just want you to know, this is prepared beforehand. Look what happened. Behold, thy king cometh unto thee. He is just and having salvation, lowly, riding upon an ass, and upon a colt, the foal of an ass. And I will cut off the chariot from Ephraim, the horse from Jerusalem, the battle bow shall be cut off, and he shall speak peace unto the heathen, and his dominion shall be from sea even to sea, and from the river to the ends of the earth. And look what it says, and for thee also, by the blood of thy covenant, have I sent forth thy prisoners out of the pit, wherein there is no water. And so he's pulling from all sorts of pictures we don't have time to get into, but he's evoking scenes like Joseph, and he's evoking scenes of sending someone aforetime to make something prepared ahead of time. Like, there's all of this language that you see. But I want to go to one other passage, and I want you to see this as well. You notice, as John said, that they noticed and they said, he's basically turned the world upside down. All the world has gone after him. And the Pharisees couldn't abide that. It was a threat to basically their idols. It was a threat to their power, and they said, we got to take this guy out. And look at Isaiah 52. If there's one passage, two passages, that I would recommend you memorizing and knowing. Psalm 22 is a beautiful one. We've gone over it many, many times throughout the years. Psalm 22, beautiful, beautiful passage, nails the details of the cross perfectly. But I want you to notice Isaiah 52 and 53, and we're going to read this real quick, because I want you to notice the prophecies that are made here of even the Gentiles coming to Christ. But here's the catch. He has to die. This figure, this Christ figure, this suffering servant is about to go to the cross. It's all prepared beforehand. He realizes there is sin that has consequences that need to be paid. That sin needs to be paid for. He can't just go and go, it's an oopsie, I'm just going to let you go. He is going to come and he is going to pay the sin debt with his own blood, and the Gentiles will follow after him. And I want you to notice that, Because look at Isaiah 52, all right? Isaiah 52, and we're going to start verse 13. There are 4 servant songs in the book of Isaiah, and this is toward the end of it. And what you see here is this servant is about to do something to save a lot of lives. Isaiah 52, verse 13, behold, my servant shall deal prudently. He shall be exalted and extolled and be very high. Triumphal entry. Exalted, extolled, very high. He's going to come riding on a lowly beast. But they're going to celebrate him like he's a king. But then look what happens to him just later on in that week. And many were astonished at thee. His visage was so marred more than any man, and his form more than the sons of men. So shall he sprinkle many nations. The kings shall shut their mouths at him. For that which they have not been told they shall see, and that which they have not heard they shall consider. So this report is going to go out to the ends of the earth, and people who never saw it happen, never heard this guy talk, they're going to hear his sermons. They're never going to see his face, but they're going to know all about him. And then we get to the beautiful passage in chapter 53, where it seems like Israel itself finally realizes what they have done. And they finally turn, and they turn back to their Messiah. And this seems to be written from a Jewish perspective in the future as they realize what they did. They haven't realized it yet. Look at Isaiah 53, verse 1. Who hath believed our report? And to whom is the arm of the Lord revealed? For he shall grow up before him as a tender plant, and as a root out of a dry ground. He hath no form or comeliness. But when we shall see him, there is no beauty that should be desired him. He is despised and rejected of men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. And we hid, as it were, our faces from him. He was despised, and we esteemed him not. And I want to pause, because again, I want to ask you, where are you spiritually right now? Are you the type who is here, Palm Sunday, celebrating your king, coming in on a donkey, saying, he's about to do everything I ever wanted him to do for me. He is about to upturn the political system in the way I want him to. Hey, he is about to make things happy, slappy, and glad again. Are you a genuine disciple who says, the Messiah has come? Ooh, if I know my prophecy, things are about to get bad for a little while. But I know he knows what he's doing. Where are you? Are you the type, or you, I mean, you might be completely other. You might be the Pharisees who are going, we hate you because you're a threat. But I trust if you're here this morning, you probably fall into one of these two camps. You're the type who's excited to see Jesus. You're excited about Palm Sunday. You're excited. And you think everything's happy-go-lucky and it's going to be great. Or you might be excited, kind of knowing, well, we've still got a ways to go. But the test is when everything goes south, do you stay faithful? Do you stay faithful? Because anybody can stay faithful when it's all going well. Now, look at where this ends. Because Israel at some point is finally going to yield, finally going to give in. And look at verse 4. Surely he hath borne our griefs, and he carried our sorrows. Yet we did esteem him stricken, smitten of God, and afflicted. He was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace, the punishment that brought peace between us and God, the chastisement of our peace was upon him. And with his stripes, we are healed. And so this is where we get our heart attitude that I'm willing to stick with him. Because look at what he's already done for me. I'm willing to obey because I know obedience is the best way. It's not the most comfortable way. It's not like, I'm so happy to be persecuted. But let me ask you, what other option? I heard a guy describe this week. He said, you know what addiction is? He says, addiction is slow suffocation by pleasure. And I was like, oh, that's actually rather good. But you think about the things that we replace God with. You think about the things that we say, you know what, God, you're not worthy of my worship. You're not worthy of my honor. I'm going to set this thing up instead. And they're pleasurable. And that's why we go after them. But they slowly kill us and they replace everything that we should be focusing on. And that's what these people were. They're celebrating Jesus as King and Lord, but it's just with their mouth. And when the rubber hits the road, they go, this isn't what we signed up for. I'm going to find a new idol that does what I want it to do. And so this Palm Sunday, is Jesus really your king? Is he really your Lord? Is he someone you are truly following and saying, no, 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 come thick or thin, I'm stuck with him, whatever comes? Or is he just, hey, as long as it's convenient. As long as it's convenient, I'll stick with it. Because it works for me right now. I've told you, I've read a lot of business books. A lot of business books like to quote the Bible. Because the Bible works. Now, they're not quoting the spiritual side. They're not saying, oh, you know what, we need to do this and this. No. They're quoting the part that talks about prosperity and working hard, because that works. But there's a lot of other stuff in there that you're like, I don't want to do that part. And so I want you to see this, because this is the triumphal entry where a whole bunch of people celebrated the Lord. And they were happy and they were excited. But when things didn't go to the plan, they go, I'm going to check out. And that's why we get to next week. So let's finish this story, because look what happens. It says, this is all planned. None of this caught God off guard. He was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquity. The chastisement of our peace was upon him. With his stripes we are healed. And then it says, and this is who he came and died for. He knew exactly our state. He knew exactly who we were going to be. All we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned every one to his own way, and the Lord hath laid on him the iniquity of us all. And I'd be remiss if I didn't open up that invitation this morning. If this isn't you, this can be you. If you're carrying your own sins and you're saying, I'll figure it out on my own, I'm okay, I don't need Christ. No, you do. And you need to repent and you need to turn to him alone. Okay? That's it. Turn to Christ, trust him alone for your salvation, and you'll be saved. But again, we try to replace Christ with our own thing, our own idol, our own statue, our own lusts, our own desires. He goes, no, don't. And it says this, he has borne this, he has taken away the iniquity of all, and then look what happened to him. He was oppressed, and he was afflicted, yet what? He opened not his mouth. The mouth that created the world, that could have ended all this for him, he goes, nope, I'm not going to say a word. I'm going to take it all. He is brought as a lamb for the slaughter, and as sheep before her shearers is dumb, so he opened not his mouth. He was taken from prison and from judgment, and who shall declare his generation? Where are his kids? Where are his descendants? Nowhere, for he is cut off from the land of the living. For the transgression of my people was he stricken. He made his grave with the wicked, and with the rich in his death, because he had done no violence, neither was any deceit in his mouth. Purely innocent, perfect, sinless, spotless before God and man. And yet he died a wicked sinner's death for us. And if he does that for us, then we know anything else he does to us or for us is for our good and for his glory. It won't be comfortable, because he says, all who live righteously shall suffer persecution. That's what's going to happen. But we know that we're right with him. And verse 10, yet it pleased the Lord to bruise him. He put him to grief. When thou shalt make his soul an offering for sin, he shall see his seed. He shall prolong his days, and the pleasure of the Lord shall prosper in his hand. He shall see the travail of his soul, and shall be satisfied. By his knowledge shall my righteous servant justify many, for he shall bear their iniquities. Therefore, I will divide him a portion with the great. He shall divide a spoil with the strong, because he has poured out his soul unto death. He was numbered with the transgressors, and bare the sin of many, and made intercession for the transgressors. And that's why John says, wow, even the Gentiles are following this guy. This guy's turning the world upside down. And you have two choices. You follow him as your king and as your Lord and as your God, or you fight against him and say, not my king. Where are you? And that's the question I want you to meditate on this week. Because as we go throughout this week, think through what's going to happen. Jesus doesn't do it their way. They lose patience with him, and they crucify him. And then he rises from the dead to go, what you tried to do had no power anyway. Good try. And now, the gates of salvation have been opened to everyone. Good work. And that's where he didn't lose control at any point along this way. But he got them to show their heart. He got them to show what was really going on inside. And this week, I'm going to ask you to meditate on that. Are you right here celebrating the triumphal entry? Jesus is awesome. Jesus is great. I'm not actually going to do what he wants, but he's great, and I really like him. Or are you someone who says, nope, I'm surrendering to the Lord. I'm following him through thick and thin. I am his disciple, and I will not walk away. Where are you? And that's the question I have you to answer. We're going to close in prayer here. And as we close in prayer, I'm going to ask Happy to play the song we ended on.